We go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green. He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the ranking member as well. I am a son of the South. What the Constitution accorded me, my friends and neighbors took away from me. I lived through invidious discrimination. I know what it looks like. The KKK burned a cross in my yard. I know what it smells like. I had to go to filthy waiting rooms and colored restrooms. I know what it sounds like. I've had ugly things said to me. So I know what invidious discrimination is like. I know the harm that discrimination can cause. And I'm very much concerned about Section 7, which reads, it amends the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and the Fair Housing Act to require intent to discriminate. I'm very much concerned about this because whether by accident or design, discrimination still hurts. The pain is not eased simply because it was done without intentionality. And I'm talking about H.R. 2133, Section 7. So I'd like to visit with Mr. Astrada for just a moment. Mr. Astrada, does making the requirement one of intentionality to have a cause of action, does that in some way decrease the harm that's caused when one is discriminated against?
That particular question, absolutely not. It doesn't decrease the harm caused just because it was intentional or in effect rather than in intent.
And does it benefit the people who are discriminated against to require intentionality?
No, in fact, I would say it puts a barrier toward equity.
Do you find that discrimination exists in banking?
Yes, I mean, there's a long history of not only discrimination in the marketplace, but through federal government programs with FHFA and redlining. So I think there's more than enough evidence on both the industry and government side to show that.
When you balance the benefits with the liabilities associated with this, do the liabilities of doing this outweigh the benefits such that it's just not a good thing to do for people who are being harmed?
I'd agree with that, but I would reframe that. I think that it's a privilege to look at racism in a cost-benefit analysis. I think if you're the victim of racism and discrimination, you don't have the privilege of saying, you know, what is my feelings compared to your data collection efforts. So I would think that, especially around the issue of disparate impact, which has been upheld in the housing discrimination cases with the Supreme Court, employment cases all the way back to 1970, that racism is not a cost-benefit question. So while we want to be supportive of industry and be mindful of the cost that it would take to collect data to root out systemic discrimination, I think that having the privilege to say, what's the cost-benefit of racism versus how much I have to pay to collect that data is a very dangerous way to approach the problem.
Thank you for your very thoughtful response. I would just end with this. If you haven't known the pain of discrimination, it can be difficult for you to appreciate my commentary. But when your neighbors deny you what the Constitution accords you, it can be very painful. And there are a good many people in this society that will never suffer any pain if we make this change. but there are a good many other people who will be subject to harm if we do so. And we ought to want all people to have the same opportunities in this society. This is a bad piece of legislation. I absolutely oppose it, and I want my record to reflect that I would never support something that's going to harm people in this fashion. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. With that, we go